Hello, everyone. This is Asbed Bedrossian.
And this is Hovik Manucharyan.
And we're talking with Gev Iskajyan on the latest conditions and events during the Artsakh Blockade. Gev, as you remember, is with the ANC in Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh. He lives in Stepanakert. Today is August 19, 2023, and this is the 250th day of the Artsakh Blockade.
Hey, Gev, thanks for joining us again.
Hi, Gev.
Hey, guys. Good to be on.
Gev, last time we talked about a month ago, but it honestly feels like a year because just maybe the amount of stuff that has transpired. We've had kidnappings at the illegally set up checkpoint. We've had more deaths and news about people dying from famine. We have constant news about Azeri military aggression, farm equipment being destroyed so that people can't even conduct regular agriculture. So I don't know that we could talk about many things, but I wanted to ask you to brief us on what are the most important things that you're seeing on the ground today.
Yeah, I think, the most important thing to keep in mind, as you rightfully mentioned, we had our first recorded case of starvation. We had a young mother who suffered miscarriage because we couldn't get her to the hospital in time due to the fuel shortage. And we have all of these compounding situations. And, if you take any finite system, something with a set amount of supplies of goods, like Artsakh is today, every day those resources get depleted. And every day as those resources get depleted, the situation becomes tougher for the people of Artsakh. And I think we've noticed in the last couple of weeks, it's hit a critical juncture where the majority of the population is eating one meal a day, where you have reported deaths directly attributed to this blockade. And unfortunately, again, as you mentioned, this hasn't really stopped Azerbaijan. We've seen, in a positive aspect, a groundswell of international attention to some degree. There's more press coverage around the issue. But sometimes I'm afraid that press coverage doesn't necessarily lead to Azerbaijan, putting its foot off the gas pedal in terms of ethnic cleansing here. In fact, I think sometimes it encourages them to move faster.
I agree. I mean, compared to, let's say, Azerbaijan does one brazen act, okay, and there's some press coverage, but it's not like anyone is holding their hand to repeat that. So even the UN Security Council discussion, it was okay, a lot of countries condemned Azerbaijan, but no one actually really, there was no announcement from the president of the council. There was no resolution. And many see that as actually maybe an encouragement for Azerbaijan to continue its genocide. And
yeah, actually, on that note, can I ask Gev a question?
Yeah.
What do you think is Artsakh government's expectations, both from the UNSC as well as its expectations from the Armenian government? Were these expectations met with that council meeting?
I would say the simple answer is no, especially in light of any tangible results. So, some of the member states of the UN Security Council spoke, and some of them spoke well. However, none of that was followed up with any resolution, obviously, or any action that would be, followed upon by either the member states or the Security Council itself. And I think that's disappointing, but it's something that, throughout the last 2 weeks, when I'm talking to folks, I've been trying to prepare them for, in the mindset that, look, even if the Security Council, session happens, there's a good chance they're only going to talk. And even if they do pass some type of resolution, the teeth of that resolution, the hard, tangible results coming from that resolution, it's going to be tough to extract. And unfortunately, we're besieged, we're blockaded. There's a lot of hopes that people had upon these international institutions and these mechanisms. But I think they are starting to realize, to a certain degree, we are on our own.
Yeah, because I've heard about how these meetings go, and all of the hard diplomatic slug happens before the meeting itself. And at the meeting, they already know they're going to be advancing a resolution or something. And I didn't hear that any resolution was on the table at any point. And I'm not even sure if all that diplomatic work was done one-on-one with all the Security Council members.
Asbed, the short answer is no, but even worse, if you look at the agenda of the Security Council, the justification for the meeting was mentioned the September 13, 2022 letter by Armenia accusing Azerbaijan of attacking. If you remember, there was a short but very deadly war that happened on those 2 days. So it's not even that Armenia is putting on the UNSC agenda the fact that there is a blockade. It's just a continuation of an old agenda. That's how it was presented.
Look, I think you guys pointed something out. A lot of that wrangling that's supposed to happen, that diplomatic work that's supposed to happen behind the scenes, does not happen on that UN Security Council stage. It happens beforehand. And unfortunately, I don't think that we mustered enough gumption or enough political cachet for it to result in something more tangible. And I think a big bulk of Armenia's diplomatic capacity has been reduced to begging and asking. And I don't think you can, conduct diplomacy that way.
Okay, Gev. So coming to internal Artsakh developments, about 3 weeks ago or so, Artur Tovmasyan, the Speaker of the Artsakh Parliament or President, he had made some, I guess, verbal gaffe, or let's hope it's a gaffe. And but he said that Armenians and Azerbaijan have lived together for millennia or something like that. When Azerbaijan as a state, it was established in 1918. But he resigned the week after that. He cited health reasons. But the silver lining, many of us see, is that David Ishkhanyan from the ARF was elected. So we now the Speaker of the Artsakh Parliament is a member of the ARF. However, I have to mention that his nomination was presented by the ruling regime, so by Azeri Aggression. So at least there's some kind of a discussion and agreement. And what I sensed from the opposition in the Artsakh Parliament was kind of a lukewarm, in that, let's wait and see what happens. Not that they all sort of welcomed it. They welcomed it officially, but they were not the party initiating this appointment or this nomination. So I wanted to ask you how you see the developments from the inside, and what extra tools does David Ishkhanyan's new position give him, and any other thing that I missed or that you think is worth to mention.
So, in starting from the beginning in regards to Tovmasyan's statements, I think that's mostly a gaffe, to be honest. I want to be fair to him, but I also think that it was time for a change in terms of the Artsakh Parliament, because the political state of things had gotten a bit stale. I, as someone that knows David Ishkhanyan very well, he has my utmost trust on a personal level. And I also think that he has been a really steady voice in the Artsakh Parliament, a steady voice for the opposition. And look, I don't think that he was picked by the ruling party because we're going to work well together or anything along those lines. I think that the ruling party itself has pressure amongst the people. And a natural consequence is that members of the opposition who are supposed to hold them accountable are going to be elevated to higher roles, or that pressure is going to get to that government. I think having David as a Speaker of Parliament serves as one more layer of a check and balance against the government of Artsakh, against Araik's party. And, I think that any major decisions that would happen, now the opposition will be informed, we hope. And if the opposition doesn't agree, if David Ishkhanyan doesn't agree, if it goes against our principles, we will take the appropriate steps through the means and mechanisms allotted to us in the Constitution to oppose it. So I do think that this is overall a good development. That being said, we obviously know that the government, to some sense, is going to want to bring in someone from the opposition to quell some of the concerns of the populace. But knowing David Ishkhanyan, knowing the stance of the ARF in Artsakh, we are not going to necessarily bend or break to any of his qualms.
Gev, yesterday there was some news that the internet was cut off, apparently for about 24 hours. Obviously, we're talking to each other, so we have some connectivity. What's the situation with the whole internet, gas, electricity, food, in a couple of sentences?
Look, I think it's becoming tough. The food situation is grave, guys. If, a few months ago we were talking about only finding a few types of food supplies, now you're talking about the vast majority of stores being closed. As I mentioned earlier, you're talking about people reducing their food intake to a meal a day, if that. And then I think, that internet stuff is very concerning to me. I think that, we don't have access to international journalists, observers, or anything like that. The world relies on the voices of Artsakh to, not just the world, actually, also the Armenian nation at large relies on the word of the people of Artsakh to get information out. And when they blockade us from access to communication and information, that becomes very dangerous. And I say this because, and I don't think that this is a coincidence, they cut off our fiber optic line 5 minutes before a press conference that we were going to hold here with the ICC prosecutor that had stated that what's going on is an act of genocide.
Yeah.
So I think the Azeris are acutely aware of some of the media attention that's come about and some of our efforts here, and they're going to do everything possible to derail it.
Yeah, I think it should be worth mentioning to international media that are listening to this, because I know that actually some of them have actually reached out to us. We please continue covering this, because as Gev mentioned, there is so little information going out, and I think that it would be just to make sure that international media covers this properly and counterbalances Azerbaijan's overt and very large-scale propaganda efforts. For instance, just today, we learned that the illegal Azerbaijani checkpoint, they're also preventing the repatriation of a dead person. So Helen Dadayan, who unfortunately died in a car accident or in a vehicular accident in Armenia itself, she was in Armenia studying. It sounds ridiculous, and it would sound very ridiculous before all this happened to me. I would say there's some kind of a misinformation, but feel free to check out yourself. But her body is being prevented from being repatriated to her native Chartar village so that it could be buried there. That's the level of Armenophobia, and that's the level of genocidal intent by the Aliyev regime. And to close, I also, Gev, I know your resources are limited. It's not like you're sitting right next to Artsakh or David Ishkhanyan, for what it's worth. But we hear that worrying news that there are troop movements, that Azerbaijan is basically constructing a case in the media of Armenia's continuing to retain military presence in Artsakh, where we know that's not true, and that's Artsakh Defense Army in Artsakh. But how likely do you see the overt and actual hot war starting again? God forbid, but what do you see? What are you sensing on the ground?
Look, if we have a scale of like green, orange, red, of like how worrisome it is, and let's say throughout the majority of the last 2 years, I've only seen it come to red maybe twice. And in those instances, we had the skirmishes right before the Aghabnu territory was given away, and right before the war that you guys mentioned earlier in the podcast in September. It is at that juncture right now. Now, I can't, guarantee and say that Azerbaijan is going to attack, but from what we've seen in terms of troop movements, from reports that we are hearing, they are gearing up. At the very least, gearing up for something on a big scale. And it's something that should be worrying. And, my parting words today would be that things aren't getting easier. As time goes by, things are getting more dangerous. Resources are running lower. And the most concerning of all this, Azerbaijan is becoming more brazen.
I wish there was a good note to end this on, but this is it, I think.
Yeah, look, there's no good note to end it on, especially in these times. But I think the best thing that we can do is be aware and prepared. A lot of times these things hit us with shock. And before people can rightfully analyze the situation or realize what's going on, let's say the skirmishes, the war is kind of over, and we lose land, we lose territory, we lose boys. I think now, at this juncture, we have to know what's ahead of us. And, there may be things we can do, there may be things we can't do, but being prepared is essential.
Yeah. As a parting comment on my part, I want to repeat what Hovik said, that we have some international media that listen to us. We try to stick to the facts on this show, and we want to make sure that you know what's going on from the ground up. And second is that as far as expectations go, I'd like everyone to know that the United Nations Security Council meeting and discussing Artsakh is not an end to itself. So nothing has been achieved just by a discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Gev, for joining us today.
Thank you, Gev.
Glad to be on, guys. We'll talk soon.